Hey, thanks, Kathleen. Hi, everybody. We are eager to hear from Dr. Dave, also known as Dave Greenbaum. He and I have known each other a long time. I can't recall the year that he first came over to, save my neck on some old computer that was probably, 100 pounds to lift. And I don't even know. I think there might have been a fax machine involved, Dave. I can't remember, but he's been in business a long time here in Lawrence. Dave, how has your business grown over the years? I know you started out by yourself, didn't you?
Yeah, I started out on my own after leaving another company in 2003.
Okay.
So we're going to hit the 20th anniversary soon. I'm old
Yes, you
enough to
are.
vote, but not old enough to drink.
All right. And how many employees do you have now?
I've got 2 employees.
2 employees. Okay. So the question was, before we began, how's business and what are people asking about these days? Have the questions changed much in 19 years? I mean, I know the technology has, but have the questions themselves changed very much?
Well, business is good. Obviously, the pandemic, the height of the pandemic affected us. We had to do a lot more remote work, which is quite a bit of a challenge when people are non-technical. It's like trying to do surgery and telling someone where to cut themselves with a scalpel. So, but we got kind of good at it, and business is obviously picking up as things pick up in general. One of the problems we faced certainly in the past year or 2 was trying to get parts for clients when something would break. We're still having trouble getting parts, supply chain issues and stuff like that. So there's challenges. I think the questions have changed. The biggest question I would see the shift, and I know everyone's going to just groan when I say it, is passwords. Passwords are so frustrating. And they become more and more important. The more we log in and the more we pay attention to things, they become much more of an issue. I would say the other thing that we worry about is backups more, or I should say we should be worrying more about, because as more of our lives move from analog to digital, when the computer breaks, we don't just lose the Microsoft Word documents and stuff like that. We lose our access to the world, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. This was our connection to everyone, from doing telehealth sessions with doctors to ordering groceries online to paying bills. And then of course the infamous Zoom. So I think that's really the change, is the importance of the computer and the reliance on it, and therefore the necessity for backups.
Yeah. Well, we were just thinking, we've done some, I think, helpful programs over the last few months, but it always seems that questions come up about security, safety, privacy, hackers. It doesn't matter really what we're talking about, with a few exceptions, but people are concerned about that. And I think, frankly, the older we get, the more vulnerable we feel. We might not really be vulnerable, but we have a lot of stuff stored on our computers, and we want to protect it. And we don't necessarily, I'm going to speak for myself now, everybody. I don't always necessarily understand the threats. I mean, you read about, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a warning about Google Chrome, and how there was a hack into Google Chrome. And if that was a search engine or program that you use, then you had to update it like right now within 24 hours and, just get to the most updated version of the software so that it could load in whatever the fix was. And that kind of scared us for 24 hours. So it's just that kind of feeling of uncertainty. And that's basically why we're going to do this today. And we want to take everybody's questions, your specific questions, and we'll just kind of do it as a free for all, really. I've got some questions to start out with, but if you have anything that's sort of been on your mind or that you've been worried about or wondering about in terms of your own situation, go ahead and put them in the chat. And I will feed them to Dave as we get to them. But since you mentioned passwords and data backup, let's talk about passwords, because that was a question on my list. And I have read that, and I think we all know this, that you shouldn't use the same password with all the different sites that you get on. and that they should be as complex as possible, which rubs me the wrong way, but I'm just I'm just asking you,
Or
is that true? And do you agree?
100% agree about the risks of reusing passwords. And if I can scroll back a little bit, you talked about the security things that you read about in the news, the hack of the week, essentially. And because the two really play into each other. So you read that Chrome needs to be updated or iPads need to be updated. I guarantee you that if I looked at the news today, there's be some thing that we all use that they say needs to be updated right now. And that's theoretically true, that there is a possibility that for whatever the problem of the day is, that given the right set of circumstances, the device could be hacked. In reality, that's probably not going to happen. The average user doesn't have to worry about what's called zero-day exploits. And what zero-day exploit is, we know about a problem, but we don't know how to fix it. Of the billions of users and devices out there, someone might be infected. On a practical level, it's probably not going to be you. But what I do worry about is less about the individuals and more about the companies, which plays into the issue of passwords. So myself, I'm probably not going to get hacked. Nobody in this room is going to get directly hacked by a company or by hackers. What is more likely to happen is someone that has a company that stores passwords, that stores credit card numbers, is likely to get hacked. It's the old adage of why do people rob banks? Because that's where the money is. So you're more likely to want to rob the bank than rob the individual. So when that company gets hacked, let's say the biggest one that affected people still is either Equifax or Yahoo. Those were two where basically anyone that had an account there, their information was stolen. So when you take the Yahoo hack, when you reuse a password, when a company gets hacked, that's where the money is not the actual dollar bills, it's your information. And once they steal your password, then they can use it other places. So Target gets hacked and you have a password that you use at Target, but it happens to be the same password you use at the bank. The hackers are smart enough to go ahead and go, we know that they have as we said, the sponsor, Cap Fed, and you have an account there and you have an account at Target. They're betting that you use the same username and password at Target as you do to the bank. So they log into the bank and take some of your money. That's the problem with reusing the passwords. They should be complex. You do cute things like you do password 1234 or let me in or something cute. And the hackers are smart enough to figure that out. Any word in the dictionary, they can pretty much use. You see in the movies where they're like, they've got a timer and they're trying all these passwords and then finally it gets the last. It doesn't work that way, but computers can do things a lot faster and try every word in the dictionary within a few seconds. So making sure to not reuse the password protects you in case one of those accounts is hacked. It would be the same thing as using the same set of keys for your car, office, and home. If you lose your keys, you lose access to all that stuff and you put everything at risk. As far as the complexity, yes, they should be complex because the more letters and numbers and stuff like that, the harder it is for the computers and the hackers to guess them. So the question is,
can I interrupt you just a minute?
Absolutely.
Because I want to define complex because when you sign up for a new site and they give you a suggested password and it is like 5 sets of 4 characters divided by hyphens. So you basically have a 25 character password and it's just gobbledygook. And you think, well, I'll never remember that. I'm just going to put in my grandchild's name and the year he was born and maybe some exclamation points and question marks. Are you recommending that we use those gobbledygook ones, or is there some kind of tolerable middle line there that we have a chance of remembering?
So that's like asking the doctor, I know you told me not to smoke, but how many cigarettes can I smoke a day? So, oh, I lost that there. The short answer to the question is allow the gobbledygook passwords. And there's two reasons for that. One is they're completely random. So the odds of a computer guessing that password to hack you is very low. But the second question is the more interesting one. How often do you have to remember that? You're probably talking about on an iPhone or an iPad or Google Chrome, which automatically has password management in them. So it goes ahead, it suggests the password. Now, what I do recommend is you write down the password somewhere, just so you don't forget it in case you need it somewhere else. But the computer is going to manage that password for you. And how often are you actually having to type that gobbledygook password? If it suggests it, then you probably don't have to type it that often. Apple does that automatically. Google Chrome does that automatically. There are third-party programs that I recommend that do that for you automatically. One of them is called, it's cutesy names. One is called 1Password and one is called LastPass. The concept is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying this was the first question from Tony. So Tony, this is your answer. So 1Password?
Either 1Password, because it's the one password you need to remember, or LastPass, which is the last password you need to remember. It's kind of cute marketing. I prefer 1Password. Can I tell you why? Not really. Why do I like, alchemy over Z's or something like that? Because I do. Yeah. So I think it's more user-friendly, I think, 1Password, but it's more expensive. So it's like $3.99 a month, I believe. And there's a lot of little features that it has in there because it doesn't just manage your passwords, it manages other critical information. It kind of keeps everything in a super secure vault inside your phone and computer. So the person has to first get your password to get into LastPass or 1Password, which that should be complex and that should be something that's relatively hard to guess, but you'll remember it once you type it the first 100 times. And then within those programs, they keep them super secure. So it's like you have a lock to get in there and then you have a lock to get into every room. So it's very unlikely the information in those would be hacked. What is likely to be hacked is what I see a lot of clients do. And they're like, oh, I'm really good. I have a unique password for everything. And I keep it in a Microsoft Word document on the computer. So that way, or I keep it in the notes on my computer. So that way, when a hacker comes in, they're going to look for that. And then I've had a few clients say, oh, no, I don't call it passwords. I call it recipes or graduation or something like that. They'll never guess it. And I have to remind them, these are computers. They can process information very quickly. They're going to look for things like emails and passwords, and they can do that within seconds on your computer. So keeping it in those type of files is bad. I think it's better to write them down and use unique passwords than to keep them on the computer. But the best answer is to keep them in a password management program. But like you say, things like Google Chrome and Apple products do that for you automatically. So the question that comes up is now, wait a minute. Now Apple has all my passwords and Google has all my passwords. How is this any better? Now I've got a big corporation that has this. How am I advancing the ball forward? You are, because if you protect your Apple ID, if you're an Apple user, Apple is pretty darn good about that. If you've ever gotten a new iPhone or iPad or new Mac, they're like, okay, first you got to give us your password. Now we're going to text you some information. Now I need you to put in this, and it takes forever, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing that they're protecting your information. Chrome is good about that, where if you have a Google account, it will sync your passwords, but you have to make sure that Gmail password is very good. So if you're talking about using Google or Apple, I would change those passwords every year. And I tell people, do it like you do checking your smoke detectors twice a year, realizing that most of us are probably not checking it twice a year or checking it once a year. But one of those clock changes, change it. I also tell people New Year's is a good time to change passwords. But if you just do those two major ones, your Apple password or your Google password, you're balancing the ease of use of having them manage it, as well as your personal security. Is Apple looking at your passwords? Is Google looking at your passwords? No, they have so much information. They don't really care about that. Apple is probably better of the two of protecting your privacy with that. Google, as some people know, when you use a Google account, there's ads, and those ads are based on places you log into, based on your history, based on your emails. They're not looking at your individual passwords, but they're looking at where you go. So saving your passwords is not any less private with Google than it would be using Google products in general. So I think that answers some of the questions about the passwords and password management.
Yeah, it did. Now,
Great.
Gloria, I'm not, did you mean to use the word passport? She says, I use a passport to back up. Is that good enough?
Okay. What she probably means.
And
is,
Gloria, you can unmute and speak up if.
No, I know what she's talking about.
Okay.
There's
okay.
It's a little external drive.
Right.
Okay.
It's Western Digital calls their small little hard drives passport.
Got it.
So I would say that is great that you're using a backup drive. What I do tell people with any backup strategy, whatever you're doing and backing up, protecting your, when you back up, you want to make sure that if something breaks in the computer, you've got it somewhere else. So it's having a duplicate copy is essentially what a backup is. And I show people, and I've got it here, because we still use something like this. Do you remember old carbon paper? We'd have, now we don't, these are carbonless, but all of our forms, and you have two copies, the original and the backup. So we find having that Western Digital external hard drive, so that way if something happens to the computer, it's somewhere else, is awesome. But one of the things that we find is people set that up and don't know how to use it, and they never test it. So they're like, oh, I have this drive, and then it doesn't work. And that goes back to the analogy of the smoke detectors. Oh, we have a smoke detector in the house. When was the last time you tested it? I don't know. When's the last time you changed the batteries? I think the year was still 19 in front of that.
Yeah.
It's like it started beeping one day that the battery was low, you unplugged and never thought about it. That's a problem. So a lot of clients that we do backup checkups on, most of them, now granted, they're contacting us for backup checkup, so they question their backup. A majority don't have it set up right. So it's got the little drive next to the computer and they never copy the information over. So.
Okay. Now this is about spam, and I was going to ask you about spam, but Angie asks, and Paula, I haven't forgotten about yours. Getting so much spam in email and text messages lately. Have had Yahoo for email for decades, and it's been good about culling suspect emails until currently, and getting text spams. I block senders, but still coming from others. Advice?
How about this? When you figure out how to help me stop getting junk mail from the Postal Service, when you solve that problem, then let's move on to spam. And I say that facetiously, but the thing is, there's no real way to prevent it. It's a constant battle between advertisers / hackers versus the good guys. And the same thing with magazines. Why? The person who put those little cards in the magazines that fall out and get all over the place, I swear they're a genius and a villain at the same time, because I hate those, but they're a fact of life. I would pay extra for a magazine that did not include those stupid subscription cards. I'm like, I'm already subscribing to your magazine. Why are you giving me more subscription cards? Anyway, but that's the short answer. There's really no way we can prevent some of this. We can manage it. We can try to minimize it, but yeah, and I have noticed in the past couple months, it's been getting a lot worse. I'm getting these Costco ones and Fidelity ones, and I get those maybe 20, 30 times a day. And the best you can do is delete. One of the questions that come up is, should I click the unsubscribe link? What do I do with this to prevent it? Within your program, whatever program you're using, Yahoo, Apple Mail, most of them have a junk or spam function. If you click the junk or spam function within the program, like on Yahoo's website where it says junk email, that helps quite a bit. Just deleting it doesn't tell Yahoo that you think it's spam. The one exception to the unsubscribe is when you've subscribed to something or it's a legitimate business. If you bought something online and then all of a sudden you start getting emails from that company, and it's a company you know and recognize, then click the unsubscribe. But if you haven't done business with the company and you're getting unsolicited messages from them, that's when you mark it as junk. So we had talked before we got started, I'm getting emails from McAfee, I'm getting emails from Norton, I'm getting emails from Geek Squad saying I owe them money. And you want to click on subscribe because like, I don't do McAfee, I don't do that. Because you didn't do business with them, that's probably fake stuff. And they want you to click the unsubscribe link so that way they can do something, get more information about you or something like that. So generally within your program, mark it as junk, don't click the unsubscribe. Opening it per se isn't going to infect your computer, but opening it sometimes tells people, the bad guys, that you have a legitimate account.
That's what I was going to ask you next,
Yep.
because I think that's at least in my mind, for those of us on Facebook, say, once in a while, you'll get something in a direct message from a friend that you know well that says, how are you doing? And this person has been hacked. And so in my mind, it's always, if I click on that and open it, or God forbid, answer it, I'm going to get hacked too. Is that true? And is that the same case with some of these really suspicious spam emails?
Great question. So opening up these messages, just opening them up, and there's exceptions to every rule, but we can say for all practical purposes, won't impact your computer. At the worst case scenario, when you open up those emails, they'll know that you opened it. And that could say, oh, wait a minute, we know what type of emails this person opens. That's actually a legitimate use of any type of software. If you've ever gotten emails from MailChimp or Constant Contact, they track that. And as a business owner, I kind of like that because I know who's opening up my emails, who's not opening up my email, stuff like that. So that's legitimate. Now, as far as that Facebook message thing, if you, what it is it's identity theft, and there's nothing you could do to stop it. So I could create an account on Facebook tomorrow with any picture and say I'm so-and-so, but I could call someone on the phone, fake the caller ID and say I'm president of the United States. And you might be, oh, I don't know, why are you calling me? But the caller ID said United States, and that's how they answer the phone. So there's nothing you can do to prevent someone from taking information. Now, and pretending to be someone else. This scam has been going on way before Facebook. If you've ever had this, you said you talked about scams and all that. There was the famous scam of grandma, and then you say the person's name, and they say, I need money. That is an old scam. That goes back to, I think it was like the 1960s I read about. And then there was the whole Nigerian prince scam and all that. So these things are always out there. You can't prevent someone from impersonating someone else. When you get those messages and you know it's not the person, you can report that profile of Facebook. And I do that all the time when I get those messages. I use common sense of like, she wouldn't respond to me that way. And she already has a Facebook account. So people worry. We get calls a lot of times. I think my Facebook is hacked because friends are getting messages from me that I didn't send. And Facebook has now, it's so common that they'll say this profile was recently created. And if it says the profile was recently created, that was just a hacker. And there's not a whole lot we can do about that. We're in a constant battle between the good guys and the bad guys.
Okay. What are the dangers of sending and receiving group emails, i.e. multiple people lists?
Besides annoyances of those messages.
Besides the fact that they'll reply all and you'll get 20, yeah, but
Yes.
I mean, I
it's
guess,
like-
are there any security concerns or safety? And I guess that depends on whether you know the people, right?
Right. The biggest problem with that is, I would say privacy. Is when you do something like that, it's more the practical issues of, you just gave out the list of everyone's email and not everyone consented to that. So I've been in some private groups for health problems and stuff like that. It's like, you just emailed everyone and you put it in, not BCC. So I just saw everyone else that has that. And then someone goes the reply all. But on a practical level, there's no security risks. Now, what would happen is, let's say someone on that list got a virus on their computer and it's sent to everyone listed on their computer, they could potentially send you the virus. But I would say group chats, besides the annoyance of the reply all and potential privacy concerns of people seeing everyone's email, there's no technical risks with that for the most part.
Okay. And Paula wants to know about private apps on cell phone from banks or credit card companies. Are they generally considered safe? You would think that they would take all the precautions.
That is a great question. And I'll tell you what, more and more security experts say, install those apps on your phone, as long as you know they're legitimate from the bank. So when in doubt, contact the bank or something like that. Usually if you go to the bank's website, there will be a link. The beauty of that is hackers a lot of times will trick you into going to a fake website. So a lot of us, if we're going to the bank, we just go to Google and we type the bank's name and we click the first thing that comes up. Well, the first things that comes up could be an ad from a hacker. Or you make a typo and you transpose 2 letters, and a lot of times you transpose those and it's the fake bank. When you use the app on your phone or on your tablet, then you know it's the bank's app and you know it's the bank's website and stuff like that. So one thing that was recommended to me recently, which is a fantastic idea, is especially if you have a credit card app or something like that, and you get one of those emails where you get a bill that you weren't expecting and they say they charged your credit card $500, don't even bother going to the website. Go on their app and see, okay, is there any weird charges on here? That way you're less likely to click on a link, you're less likely to be hacked because you're using their apps. The apps are also great because they'll notify you a lot of times. Like I'll get a text message every once in a while saying, oh, my Citibank card. Well, a lot of people have Citibank cards, or Chase card has been, was this charge authorized? I'm like, I'm not expecting a text message. So I will open up the app and the app will tell me, and the app will give me a notification of whether there's a fraudulent charge. So if I see a text message that says there was a fraudulent charge, but I don't see it in the app and I got no notifications, I know that it's spam and I'm not going to click on the link.
Okay. When I was doing my homework for this, one of the top tips on keeping your computer safe and secure, probably in the top 3, was to keep all your software up to date. And Kathleen says, I keep getting update reminders for Windows 11 on my personal computer. Should I go ahead and do that or wait a while? I'm afraid it will mess everything up. And I think we've all had that same, like, just when I got used to this operating system, now I've got to update. Is that worth it?
Oh, their marketing departments are the same people that put the cards in the magazines. And I just, there's a whole chain of people I want to have a long discussion with. So it used to not be like that. It used to, you would actually have to go out and buy the major updates. And then you knew what was safe and what wasn't safe. It wouldn't change it. So the short answer is I wouldn't upgrade to Windows 11 unless there's a specific reason, some feature you need. And this is also true on the Mac. The Mac, you start getting, hey, update to Monterey, the latest operating system, and then everything changes. Apple really got smart. They had so many complaints that now with the iPhone and the iPad, they make it clear, are we doing a security update where we're making minor changes to fix bugs and make sure things are better? rather than a major change, because it will say, hey, we're going to upgrade you to iOS, what do we have, 16 or something? Or do you just want to update? The updates we should do. Now, sometimes updates can introduce new problems. So I always usually say wait a couple days for updates just to see, because then they have to update the update. And for example, on Microsoft products, one of the most common things that Microsoft tends to have a problem is they update and then the printers don't work. This has been ongoing for years with Microsoft. It's just so crazy that they haven't figured out that some people still actually print. We don't email everything. Some people like paper and like reading things and all that. So I would not do it right before I was printing out a term paper or something like that, do an update. But usually they come out once a week, and wait a couple of days and go ahead and do them. Same thing with the iPhone. Now there are exceptions. Now that's when you hear in the news that there was some big thing and maybe you should probably update. I try to balance it. For the most part, I don't recommend doing those unless you're ready for some annoyance. But Equifax, we all know about that Equifax hack. The Equifax hack happened because someone didn't do updates. Basically, one person said, we're going to wait on those updates, and nobody got around to doing it. And then the bad guys got in and got all that information. So go ahead and do the updates every week or so after they come out, realizing that if I say every week, it's probably going to be every 2 weeks to a month. So, and along those same lines, it's a good idea to restart the device, because if you restart the device, your laptop or desktop computer or your phone or tablet, it usually does those updates then. So I tell people Sunday nights are always the quiet time in people's lives. So we're getting ready for the week, stuff like that. Go ahead and restart it. Start the new week with a fresh, clean computer and let it do its updates overnight.
Okay, well, that segues into a question I had on my list, and
Sure.
Gracie, I will get to yours too. So this thing about turning your computer off, I did see you posted on Facebook, or Instagram or somewhere not too long ago, that you close all your tabs. You said, am I the only one that closes all my tabs every day or every night? So my question is two parts. Should we be closing all of our tabs at the end of the day? And is once a week enough for completely turning off our computer?
Answer the second part. Once a week is enough.
Okay.
Really, once a month, if you go more than a couple weeks, it tends to start having problems, and you're missing those updates. So I say once a week, just like you're supposed to brush and floss your teeth after every meal. Unless you're a dentist child, nobody is brushing and flossing their teeth after every meal. I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. I don't see people in the bathroom at the restaurant doing that, but ideally you should, realizing that most people do it twice a day. So yeah, every week is fine. As far as the first question, what was it?
Closing tabs. Is it a good idea?
Closing
Does it even
tabs.
matter if you leave a million tabs open? It just
I would
slows
say
things
it
down.
does, because it does slow the computer down. So the more, you got to think, the more tabs you have open, the more websites the computer's keeping track of. So if you have 10 tabs open, it's keeping track of 10 different sites. So going ahead and closing those tabs makes the computer run a little bit faster and makes it more reliable, because if there's a problem on any one of those websites, it will lock up the entire browser, if not the entire computer. So,
Okay.
but it's also personal preference. I mean, I see people with lots and lots of tabs open, and it just freaks me out. But I'm also the type, when I go to the bathroom and the toilet paper's on the wrong way, it freaks me out too. So I'm not a good judge of that.
And would that advice apply to iPhones and iPads? I mean, should we swipe up to close all the apps we have open every once in a while?
Not the apps, believe it or not.
Okay.
The apps are a little bit different, because Apple manages those apps, and they will actually run a little bit faster. If you use an app frequently, let's say it's like Facebook or something like that, it's going to restart when it does an update, because Apple always pushes out those updates. It's going to restart itself anyway, so you're fine. But those tabs, the browsers, whether it's Chrome or Safari, is keeping track of all those websites, and it does slow down the computer. So if you got a few websites you're going to use all the time, by all means, leave it open. But if you're not using a site, go ahead and close it, because it should be relatively easy to get back into it. So I think a little bit also about the security of that. If you got hacked and the bank is open and Facebook is open and all this other stuff is open, more people are going to see things. And then I worry about the privacy of that. Someone goes ahead and says, yeah, can I show you this picture on my phone? And then all of a sudden they see my bank account. So that's more of a practical issue, but it's a little bit, it will improve the performance, and there's a little bit of a security benefit and privacy benefit to closing those tabs on occasion.
Okay. Now Gracie's question, I don't think is necessarily security driven, but I know I just went through this. She says, my old Word docs are not compatible with the new software version. How do I avoid this in the future?
And that's true of anything, where the longer you wait to make those changes, the harder it is. There's always a way around it. Just Microsoft makes it a little bit harder. So we face that issue where someone has an old version of Quicken or QuickBooks. There's a lot of old things that are out there that we can't read anymore. I mean, there's the famous story of the NASA, the moon landing tapes were lost, but even if they were, no one could read that. I mean, how many of us can read a VCR tape these days? That becomes a problem or something. I see people raise
We
their
have
hands.
two show-offs. Gary and Gracie, they're the show-offs of the class. It
Okay.
never fails. So
Okay, that's fine. I have a VCR too, and I have a cassette.
they really
player,
can. Yeah.
but I don't have an 8-track player. So if I found some 8-track or something, I might have a problem with this. And trying to explain to the millennials what an 8-track is, don't even get me started. But so there is that problem when technology changes. So usually if you take the intermediate steps, that will help. But there are lots of websites that open up old documents. It's that you're probably talking about the doc versus docx, and that change was made 10 or 15 years ago. And Microsoft makes it harder to open those, but there is a way to open them. But so in that particular instance, there's an answer. But as a general rule, it's one of those things where you want to go in every so often and make sure stuff is up to date. Because I've got like WordPerfect documents that I realized I wanted to open up something. We're selling the house at some point. I realized, oh yeah, we bought that 25 years ago, and that's in WordPerfect, and I'm not going to be able to access any of those wonderful notes I took and all that. So I had to go through quite a bit of work to open up those old files, because I never opened them. I wasn't thinking about selling the house. So you always have to kind of go through that intermediate conversion steps. Just every so often check to make sure that you can still access that, whether it's a computer thing, or for our VCR people, we'll say, you need to check those tapes to make sure that they haven't drifted over time, and you need to copy them over and convert them.
Okay. Here's a question. How does one find a company's app? Say you want to download your bank's app. Do you find that on the website, or do you have to go through the app store and go that route?
I think the website is best. We haven't had, both Apple and Google are pretty good about not letting fake bank sites in. That is one thing they are super secure about. Wordle, they're not, but banking sites, they are pretty good about. I would go to the bank's website directly, and usually there's a link to download something. Or I think really we've all, because of the pandemic, gotten pretty good with those QR codes. And most banks will have a QR code at their bank to download it. But when in doubt, call and ask, and they'll email you and send you a link to download it. Again, if you get the link without calling them, then don't download it, because it's probably spam.
So call as in use the phone.
Yeah, your phone does other things.
What
It's
a concept.
amazing. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Gloria, your other question kind of pertains to what I'm going to say pretty soon here. Couple of the other top tips I read about were first, use a firewall. Now, how do you know you have a firewall? And is that something that's just automatically built into a computer?
In 2002, yeah, it's 2022. It's all it's all built in for the most part.
And does it have to be turned on?
No.
No, it's just
For ye-
always on. Okay.
It's kind of, and what a firewall is, it's designed to, like the word says, it blocks things. It creates a wall that things can't pass through. So the hackers are less likely to get in if you have a firewall. Now, that's an old adage, like, if the email's from someone then it's safe. No, it's not. So firewalls, I think, are built into most devices these days. And now companies will sell you advanced firewalls. And the idea is they protect you against hackers better in theory. But for the most part, a firewall is a firewall. It only lets in things that you say you can let in. So I don't worry about that too much. I worry more that you have a good antivirus or anti-spyware, which, by the way, are the same thing.
Well, that was my next question.
I
So
remember.
go for it. I think you remembered that. Okay, what is the difference? And you're saying no difference?
It's different terms of art. It's like when you say you go to the doctor and you say, I have a bug. Well, is it viral or bacterial? It's a bug. I don't know. I'm sick. So there is a technical difference between spyware, viruses, malware, Trojans, but we generally refer to all of those as viruses. So you wouldn't install probably an anti-spyware. You would install, the technical term is malware, mal being bad, anything that's bad on the computer. But whether we call them Trojans, potentially unwanted programs, those are more marketing people that describe it. So when I use the term antivirus, I think that's the most common way of understanding this stuff. And I won't use the term malware unless I'm speaking on a very technical aspect of it. So a good antivirus will protect you from all that stuff. Because really, if you have a firewall and someone breaks through the firewall, you're still going to need antivirus. It's like locks on the house. Once they break in, you still want some kind of protection for your valuables and stuff like that. So
even if you have an Apple, because we used to be told that if you had an Apple or a Mac, that you didn't have to bother with that antivirus stuff. Has that changed?
That has changed. That was more of a marketing strategy by Apple. They were very careful. They are much less likely to get viruses. And malware, again, we'll use the general category when we say viruses. They are much less likely to get them. They are not immune. So my professional opinion is, if I've had a client that's never had a virus on a Mac, I leave it to them for personal choice, if they want one or not. It's about $40 a year. And I think if you haven't had that problem and you don't use the computer that extensively, you may not need it. The viruses will do much less damage on a Mac than on a PC. But what we worry more about on either of these devices are viruses aren't as much of a problem anymore, because they make so much money off of the scams. All they have to do is give you a fake ad on a website, and you call the phone number, you give them access to the computer. Well, that's a heck of a lot easier than breaking into your computer with a virus. You did all the hard work. You called them, you gave them access to the computer, so they don't need to put a virus on there. And unfortunately, no antivirus or anti-spyware or anything will protect you from calling a number or responding to a number and allowing someone to access your computer.
Okay, would you like to recommend some good protection programs? I've got a question about Windows Defender, whether or not it's a good one, but feel free to recommend others.
Sure. I think I would make the same argument with Windows Defender is the built-in antivirus on most Microsoft products. And Apple has built-in antiviruses as well. They just don't market it differently. It's just built in. I think for most people, that's probably enough. If you're concerned about security and viruses, peace of mind is invaluable. And the one I recommend is Malwarebytes, and it's about $40 a year. I think it balances the right level of protection and security, because a lot of the companies will charge more and they have a lot of stuff that you don't need. And I use the analogy of security in your home. It's really great if you have the deadbolt and you have the chain, and you have the second deadbolt, and then you have the alarm system, except when you have a handful of groceries and it's raining and you're trying to get through all that, and you just decide, you know what, I'm not arming the alarm, I'm not putting on the deadbolt, this is too much of a pain. So it's kind of that balance issue. And I think malware bites balances the two. Things like McAfee and Norton and all those other things, I think they try to do too much, and a lot of times they get in the way. Now, if you're a teenager playing Minecraft and all that other stuff, yeah, you probably need it, because you're probably going to a lot of websites as you explore the internet that can cause problems. But for the average home user, and I think most of the people here, they can probably get by with just malware bites, if anything.
Okay, I've got one last question on my
Sure.
list that I can see, but guys, feel free to tell me if I've missed you. This is from Paula. She says, drop downs, downloads. I do want to keep most of them, but sometimes I keep the page. But can I delete it from the downloads list? So I think she means, the list that the downloads go into once
Right. They're not really, they're not, I mean, unless you're downloading something you don't want people to see, like, oh, you're getting a gift for someone, and I've been doing this enough that I see weird things. And I'll tell you, the PG versions of some of these things is someone wants a surprise party, wants to do something like that, and they download something and someone sees it. Then I would remove it from the downloads list. It's not taking up any space just being on the list. Certainly, if you've downloaded something and you no longer need it, I generally delete it if it's a program or something like that. But if it's like a menu to a restaurant, I don't know, maybe I'm a digital hoarder. I keep it in the downloads folder, figuring, oh, maybe I'll need it later. And then every once in a while, I'm like, why did I even that restaurant's been closed for 5 years? Why do I need that? Until someone says, hey, do you remember that one restaurant? Oh, well, yeah, I don't remember. I had their menu, I deleted it. So it's like the junk drawer in the house. As soon as you clean it out, you find the one thing in there that you needed, and then you have to go to the store and get it. So does that answer the question? I think as far as the downloads and the downloads list?
Give me a nod or a shake, Paula. Or yeah, go ahead and unmute.
Okay, well, it's a combination. That's why I couldn't figure out how to say it.
Yeah, okay.
Some of these things I've downloaded, but then when there's a place that it sent me this is what I applied for maybe a job. It was a joining in a group.
Yeah.
Well, then they send me back email. Then I download this form, I download that form, I download this form. But then some of them I want to save. So if I say save it, it still shows up on my download list. Does that make sense? I think
so. Yeah.
When you go to that file or something.
Right.
So there's this long list, but I've already saved some of them that I wanted to in a category,
Right.
library,
Yeah.
restaurant. If I delete one, does it lose it from the other one?
If you delete the thing you downloaded, it still stays on the download list. And if you clear off the download list, which is essentially the history, if you clean your download history, it doesn't remove the downloads. I think that answers the question.
That's what yes. I didn't want to maybe get rid of something that I wanted to keep, but yet it was on that history, history.
Yep.
Because it's tricky. To me, it's still tricky.
Yeah. I try to organize my downloads a little bit, but that downloads list is just a history of the download. So that's independent. Just like if you clear your history from your browser, you can still go to those websites.
Okay, we have one more.
Excellent.
If you have malware bites, or I suppose any antivirus protection program, can you also put it on your iPhone and iPad?
Somewhat. Most of those companies will sell you malware protection for your mobile devices. It's less necessary on an Apple device than it is on a Google device. If you stay within, most of the time, downloading stuff from their stores, the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, you're very unlikely to get any sort of viruses. Viruses are almost impossible on an iPhone. you have to be very, very specifically targeted for that. So, and those targeted ones, the antiviruses can't block anyway. What most of them do is they prevent scams and stuff like that. So they will check to make sure you didn't download scammy software, and make sure that phone protection, like spam phone calls and spam texts, they will help with that. But they're not necessary. But if you buy the programs, a lot of times they'll offer you a discount on the mobile device version of it. I know Malwarebytes will do that if you can buy a package that includes all your devices for a set price. But I know very few people that use it. I've tested those, and they seem to create some false positives for people. People worry too much. I generally say use common sense with a lot of these things.
Okay, this is the last question, everybody.
Excellent.
How often should we clear our history if we don't want to be tracked?
Well, okay. Clearing your history does absolutely nothing to prevent you from being tracked outside of your computer. So again, if you're giving that PG example of wanting to set a surprise party and someone else in the household sees the history, they're going to know all the websites you went to, whether you're going to Lydia's and Grunauer and all that, which, man, it's too bad Lydia's isn't open for lunch. They have the best Sunday brunches. But anyway, so if you want to prevent that, that's fine. The fact is that your internet service provider and the websites you've been to are already tracking you. And there are ways of using software to protect you against that. So your, Midco or AT&T can't see the website you went to. The websites don't know where you are, but then that causes some other issues. You can use like some security level browsers, both Opera and I think DuckDuckGo, both have ways of preventing you from being tracked, but they're only protecting you from being tracked from site to site. So if you've ever noticed, like on Facebook, if you go and you're looking at where to eat in Kansas City, all of a sudden you see ads for Lydia's, Grunauer, and Jack Stack. That's because it's tracking you. Facebook and your browser are helping the two communicate to produce ads. That will protect you against stuff like that. But beyond that, if you're worried about websites knowing that you've been to them, for the most part, you're pretty much being tracked every time you use the internet. And I think there are strong privacy advocates and there are ways around it, but then you lose a lot of benefits. The more you protect your privacy, the harder it is to use the computer, the worse the ads are. You have trouble some clients, like, for example, that are very strict on privacy and clear the cookies. Every time they go to the bank website, they've got to have the bank text them and stuff like that to get into it. So some of those trackings are there for convenience.
All right. Well, we did get the VPN question, Dave, and there is 1 minute to go. Can you answer it in 1 minute?
I will do that. I got 60
dare
seconds.
you.
60 seconds on the clock, please.
How effective is it?
It is very effective in protecting your privacy. If you do something through a VPN, other people can't see it, which again is good and bad. If you're dealing, for example, with telehealth information or something like that, most of the telehealth software essentially uses a VPN. So nobody can see what's going on between your computer and your doctor's computer. If you're talking about going to banking sites, they've already got that built in, some of those protections. If you want, so that way nobody knows where your internet service provider and the website doesn't know it's you sitting here in Lawrence, Kansas, that's when you use a VPN. If that is a concern, by all means, use a VPN, but be prepared for the fact that websites won't know who you are and won't know you're in Lawrence, Kansas, and that could cause you other problems.
So good to do if you're on the run.
If you are on the run, I would absolutely recommend doing it. And again, if you are in, because we gave an example before, if you are in a country or a place that has it blocked, like I have a few clients that have gone to China and Russia, and they absolutely use a VPN, and I would highly recommend it because you can assume that once your computer is in that country, people are monitoring everything you're doing because the internet service providers have agreements. But here in the good US of A, I wouldn't worry about that as much unless you're on the run or unless you are a very famous celebrity and don't want people to know who you are.
All right. That was excellent, Dave. Thank you so much.
You're
We
welcome.
got a
And I got it
lot
done.
in.
Did I get
Really?
it done in 1 minute?
You did,
Impressed.
yeah. No, yeah.
Very nice.
And we got a lot of topics in. So I'm on my list. I'm through my list, and I think we got to every single question. So thank you so much.
Yay.
I'm a little bit relieved, I think, just the reality of who's going to get hacked and things like that, and made me feel a little better.
Well, that's
about
good.
everything.
That's
Less
good.
paranoid, I guess, is what I want to say.
Be less
Okay.
paranoid, use common sense.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again. And thanks to
Yep.
all of you for joining us today. And we will get together for another tech club next month, first Thursday in June. Won't we, Kathleen? Yeah, we're continuing that through the summer, or are we? Did I just speak out of turn?
I actually just checked our reader, and we were going to take a little bit of a break this summer from Tech Club, but
Oh, those words were coming out of my mouth, and I
Yeah.
thought, this isn't.
but if some
we're
hot
doing other
topic
things
comes
and-
up, we will schedule one and
Yeah,
let you all
sorry
know.
about that. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Okay. All right. Well, have a good night, everybody, and enjoy the weekend. We'll
All
see
right.
you next
Yeah,
time,
thanks for
whatever it
being here.
is, whatever we're doing. We'll see you. All right.